Think about money as being the currency on the material level, and think about life energy being the currency on the non-material level. Where you're going to put your life energy is where your money's going to flow. Where you put your money is where your life energy is going to flow.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schuessler. This week, I'm talking to Isa Gucciardi, an entrepreneur, author, teacher, and therapist in Berkeley, California, who works with people all over the world. Isa is the creator of Depth Hypnosis and the founder of Sacred Stream Center. Listen as we talk about how she expanded beyond her private practice and created Sacred Stream Center. You'll hear that Isa thinks about money and service in a very integrated way. I think it's important for you to hear from her because she's a visionary. You're not going to get any typical business advice here. Instead, you're going to hear Isa talking about her real experiences turning her visions into a robust business model that keeps changing and expanding over time. Welcome, Isa. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So I'm excited to get to talk to you about something that probably isn't what people always ask you about, which is your entrepreneurial journey. And I know that you are an author and a teacher, and you have been at this for over 30 years, and you're the creator of Depth Hypnosis. So that is a big deal. And what we're going to dive into now is, what has it been like for you with business and money, and how you have, walked through this journey of being a healer and a teacher, and also, running a business. I want to dive in by first asking you about how the business model works of Sacred Stream.
Well, it's organized as a Buddhist church. It's a nonprofit organization. It's actually classified as a church, which is a very important feature in terms of being. It's already important that we're a nonprofit, but then to be a nonprofit and then also be a church, that really provides us with a very good umbrella to be able to do the business of spirituality. And I think that, the foundation itself was created in response to the burgeoning emergence of depth hypnosis as a model. It started out with me doing an individual hypnotherapy practice as I was getting my PhD, right? That was how it started out. And so it was a very straight ahead business model, where people come in, they pay you money, you offer them a service, right? And I found that as I was doing the hypnotherapy, I began pulling kind of spontaneously from my years of study in shamanic practice and Buddhist practice and my many years as a medium and working with energy medicine. I began to see them all kind of come together in this process of helping people look at their issues in this altered state that hypnotherapy generates. And so suddenly there was so much more than hypnotherapy going on. There was soul retrievals that were happening in the context of regressions. There was energy medicine that was happening in the context of helping people deal with resistance. There was, this deepening understanding of the importance of fierce compassion from the Buddhist perspective. And so there was suddenly this kind of, very dynamic thing happening in the therapeutic process. And it began really drawing a lot of people. And by the end of my first year in practice, I had a list literally of 100 people that I was never going to get to on the waiting list.
Okay. So it was really pushing you beyond the boundaries of just a traditional private practice.
Right. And I realized if I was going to be able to help these people, I had to train other people. And so I remember I had one MFT in my practice at the time, and I remember calling her up and almost like crying, begging her to learn what I was learning myself, in the sessions. And she was like, nah, no way, And I'm like, okay, well, I have to find people that want to learn this. So I started teaching depth hypnosis, and then I realized, okay, well, these techniques are important, but people really need to have a better understanding of the way that energy moves and the healings that are done on a shamanic level. What's happening on an energetic level when there's a soul retrieval happening, when there's a power retrieval happening. And then I realized, well, if I'm going to teach that, I have to teach energy medicine. And then if I'm going to teach people how to keep their prejudices and their judgments out of the therapeutic session, I have to teach them Buddhism, right? So then I'm like, I can't call my practice depth hypnosis anymore. It's so much more than that. I need an umbrella. I need something to hold all this. So we established the nonprofit, called it the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, because we felt that there is a stream that's running through all artistic and spiritual traditions that has it's a common stream, and you have these different flowerings coming out of that stream.
How many years between that moment when you were realizing like, I can't serve 100 people, and when you actually started Sacred Stream?
That was only like two years.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because it got big really fast. Like all of these classes just started dialing in, channeling in, and we had to have something that was holding all of that. So, and it was very small. I established it pretty much on my own with the help of my partner, and she was very helpful. But it was really my idea to do it, and then it's still very small actually, but in terms of the number of people that we work with. But having that umbrella was really helpful, and having the umbrella of the nonprofit and the having the spiritual orientation within the nonprofit was really helpful in terms of supporting the classes. And in terms of a business model, I think that, the thing that I'm describing is a very organic kind of grassroots emergence of a need that then you put a structure around in order to support it, right? That's one way of creating a business.
So it came bottom up, like it came from,
right.
There's these 100 people, there's more need than I can fill. And then you kind of had to expand the container.
Exactly.
It came from that rather than I need to make a bigger container. What should I put in it?
Exactly. And that's my native way of creating businesses. As I mentioned, I've created a bunch of businesses. I had a herbal products company that I built pretty much from the ground up and sold. And I had a translation company and translating languages that I did the same thing. And in both of those and in this one, my way of doing it is, okay, here's the organic need. Let's put the structure around it. But my partner is completely the opposite. She likes to put structures and then draw energy into it. And I've learned a lot from her about that, because I think that both have their place in terms of, talking to people who are trying to build a business. I think it's important to understand how and where you are in that way of working, because you might be one like me, like this kind of organic, oh my goodness, here's all these things happening. How can we get the structure around it? And if you have all these things happening and you don't get a structure around it, you're going to lose everything that's happening, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Will you say a little more about that? Like if you have all this stuff happening and if you just sort of were to let that wait list grow, let's say.
Yeah, we would have gone nowhere. I would have just, I was already working, 6 days a week, seeing, 7 people a day with 1.5-hour sessions. I mean, I couldn't do anymore,
Yeah.
And so I just would have exhausted myself. So we had to think of new structures, right? And all of those people that needed to be served would have fallen to the ground if we hadn't, right? But at the same time, they're like my partner, who's a brilliant strategist, absolutely brilliant. And like she can look into the future and she can see, okay, these are the potentials that are going to happen. These are the structures that we have to put in place in order to be able to manage those potentials when they happen. And I'm like, and then she draws, and then I've got all this, but from the way that I work, I have all this, I'm always generating, there's always something that's bubbling out of what I do. And then she pulls that into the structures, and then we're able to grow and grow and grow. And you can't imagine how much we actually do as a small nonprofit with the resources that we have, because she has her skills in this building of the structures and drawing energy into it. And I have my skills in recognizing what structures are needed as things are emerging. And I really think it's the reason why we've been able to sustain over the years. It's very common for nonprofits to come in and out of business and disappear. Yeah. But I think that this is key. And if there was a message that I would offer your listeners, it would be to try to understand, where are you in this process? And one of the things that you see with people like my partner is, her name is Laura Chandler. And, she is truly a very, very creative person and very, very strategic person. But one of the things that people like her who like to create structures and then wait for something to come into them, this is not her, but people like her can just build structures and they stay empty. Right? Like that's, and so you have to have something that's drawing power into the structures that you're creating. And I think that she's really learned a lot about how amazing a strategist she is, because she's always had all this power coming in from my work, right? So she's able to really understand, and she's learned a lot about herself, how much she knows. And I think that one of the things that can happen with people who like to build structures and they just sit there and nothing happens. They wait for something to feed the structure, but you have to have something organic. You have to have a reason why that structure is there. There has to be something that is going to be flowing into the structure. And so I think for your listeners to think about, okay, do I err on the side of just creating structures and then don't do the work to generate something into it? Or do I err on the side of like, I can generate things, but then I don't create structure around it?
Right. That is excellent. And I think we've got a lot of people listener, maybe this is you, who are not creating the structure, like who have the energy coming in, and what they're thinking is, and maybe it hasn't been as obvious as what happened to you because they don't have quite as big of a wait list, but they have the service is happening and they're thinking, this is just how it has to be. This is the business model. There is no other business model. Oh, I'm burning out, but that's just how it has to be. And they're not seeing, and maybe they're not having like someone like your partner looking in and saying like, actually the structure has to shift here. We have to, create an additional structure. We have to, like, you've got a course that you need to teach, or you have a group you need to create, or a workshop, for example.
Or, one of the things, in terms of business, one of the really wonderful things about Laura is that she is really into describing what you're doing. Like that has been a real learning curve for me, because I just do what I do, and I think everybody's going to figure out what I'm doing and get on board and we'll do it. Right. But she's like, no, you have to meet people, you have to describe what you're doing. You have to break it down.
Oh, I love that. Like visionaries often have that issue where they're creating something really powerful, but they're not quite able to put it into words and describe what they're doing. But it's really cool that you have a partner who could kind of co-create this with you.
I mean, I really think that the synergy between us is why the foundation of the Sacred Stream is as enduring and as successful as it is. And I think that, I wish that everyone who had a small business had Laura,
Yeah.
Because I know that I would not have had the strategic capacity that she has, because when you're the one who's trying to manage all of the raw creative power coming through the little structure that you've set up, it's all you can do to manage it. Right. It was all I could do to create the class. There's this thing that wants to be taught. Now, what is it? I have to figure out what it is. I can break it down there. I can translate there. I worked as a professional translator for many years, so I understand the translation process. And I'm kind of a natural born teacher. Like, I don't know what to do with myself if I'm not teaching. It's like, I learn something and I'll turn around and find someone to teach it to. It's just the way I am. So I'm busy with that, and then I'm not looking and thinking, well, if there's a guy on the street who can't quit smoking and they want to figure out how to quit smoking with hypnotherapy, what is the bridge to help that person get into this place where there's all this creative power that can help them, right? And she's really good with that. And I think that, for your listeners, I think that, that idea of translating, breaking it down, creating the bridge, and constantly refining that. I mean, you can't imagine, we are combing over our websites, all the time. They never rest. We're always going through and re-articulating and adding, and it's just like, I thought we were going to do a website in 2002 and we'd be done. We've done like 10 websites,
It just never stops. And so what do you think when you look at something like updating your website over and over again? What do you think makes that so important?
With a website, you can't, you have to be updating it every year. And your messaging changes as you understand what you are doing in a new way. And you have to always be thinking about what you're doing. You can never stop marketing, ever.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's a big thing for therapists, or, I see with my students, because I basically train therapists. I train people to become depth hypnosis practitioners. And we do have a model for helping people understand how to establish their businesses. And I see a lot of people train a lot of therapists, a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors, we have acupuncturists. We have people come through the depth hypnosis practitioner training that are already in some kind of practice. But one of the reasons they come for the training is because they're looking for an infusion of energy into their practice. And of course, they're going to get that through the material that we teach, but they have to be willing to do the marketing work. And I see that often people get to the end of their training and they're like, I didn't know I had to do marketing. It's like, yeah, you got it. It's just starting. You're just starting, and people think they're done and they're just beginning, right?
And how do you infuse your marketing with spirituality, with meaning? Like, how do you stay in that process in a way that feels meaningful? And I'm asking that because so many therapists think that it is the opposite. Like, so many therapists run into this feeling of, marketing is the opposite of serving. Marketing is the opposite of being authentic. And I can tell from how you're talking about it that you see marketing as messaging and as, part of the same process.
Well, I think for me, when I think about it, again, I move organically from the roots out, right? So I'm thinking about, how can I serve you? How can I best serve you? That's really where I come from. And so then if you're coming from that, whatever you have to do to serve the person is what you got to do. So then you've got to have your messaging, and you have to make enough money that you can stay in the game over time. And one of the things that people often have when they think, oh, I'm being of service, they have this idea that comes out of this, Puritan informed value system in our very secular society that, if you're being of service, you should be sacrificing yourself. You should be living a penurious life if you are serving people. If you're truly of service, that means that you don't take too much for yourself. This idea that if I'm a spiritual person, I have to be poor. Or if I'm an artist, I have to be poor. And that is not true. If you are close to a spiritual fountain where energy is moving through you, or an artistic fountain where the muse is moving through you, you will naturally have money. And it's important for you to allow yourself to have that money and to create the structures that are going to preserve it.
Okay. And so if you're resisting that money by really strongly believing a story that serving means not having money, then you're actually going to limit how much help you can.
Right. But you have to think about money being, I always tell my students, think about money as being the currency on the material level, and think about life energy being the currency on the non-material level. Where are you going to put your life energy is where your money's going to flow. Where you put your money is where your life energy is going to flow, right? And life energy is, how do I think about my work? What are my intentions for being of service? What is my goal in being in the world? What are my reasons for becoming this doorway where people can enter in order to learn about themselves? You have to be really clear about that. And if you're really clear about your intentionality, and if you're really clear that, for instance, I teach a class called the Path of Service, that helps healers of all type understand why they're on the path of service. And I can't tell you how many people are unclear about their intentionality, about why they're being of service, or they are clear about an intention and it's misguided. And so money's not going to flow in then. You have to have clarity.
And you had said something right before we started. You had said something to me about how your business model works that I think is really interesting, in terms of you're referring people to the individuals who you train. They're referring people back to the programs that you've got, and then it just kind of keeps going.
Right.
It's kind of infinite loop.
I mean, the way that this came about was actually, again, through the transfer of life energy, right? So when I'm teaching a class, I'm teaching this kind of high level conceptual context for people's issues. And they can come in and they can learn in a weekend a lot of different, conceptual understandings about, and we do a lot of, experiential work. Most of the work at the foundation of the Sacred Stream is experiential in terms of learning. But it's, they're looking at this broader place in the classes. And then I can refer the students to the depth hypnosis practitioners for people to do the individual work that gets ignited or inspired through the classes. And then what can happen is when depth hypnosis practitioners have individual clients, they can send them into the class in order to gain greater understanding about the context of their issues in a short amount of time so that the individual work goes more clearly. So what I just described here is a sort of a little enlightenment machine where there's this life energy that's getting exchanged between the classes and the individual practices. And remember what I said about money following life energy. Well, then what happens is in terms of the foundation of the Sacred Stream, they get new students and earn more money for their classes from the individual practitioners. The individual practitioners get new clients coming out of the classes and they earn more money in their practice. So you have this very, like on a life energy level, you have this kind of figure 8 of robust exchange of life energy, which is matched on the material level of this robust exchange of money between the practitioner and the foundation. And all the while, the client is receiving, or the student is receiving maximum. I'm always trying to give maximum benefit, that maximum return on their money. Like there's very little waste, like everything is very focused on, how, what do you need to focus on next on your spiritual path? What are the obstacles that you need to address? So there's no fluff, this is of course we're gentle and compassionate and we have fun, but this is serious business. We're here to transform consciousness. So the client is always held and engaged in a way that is beneficial to them, and they're not getting ripped off on a money level, and they're getting a good return on a life energy level for their investment. So it's a very positive, clear model, not only for the exchange of life energy and learning and transformation on the therapeutic level, but it's a very clear machine and model for generating wealth that is fair and that is sustainable.
Sustainable for all parties.
For everyone, because the person coming through who goes through this kinds of process, they change, their life change. They get happier, relationships, they get better jobs. They figure out more about who they really are in the world and what they really want to do, so they have more fulfilled lives. So this is a great gig.
Yeah.
I'm so glad I get to participate in it. But
awesome.
But the thing is, like, we have to, on the business end, we have to constantly keep, we have to keep the websites up. We have to, do all these forms, and we have to, deal with bookkeeping. We have to be very clear in our bookkeeping. We have to keep trying innovative things and reaching more markets and setting up new collaborations and, working with new ways of working with the same material that we have. We have to constantly change this whole thing that's happening with distance learning, moving from primarily a brick and mortar situation at the foundation of the Sacred Stream in Berkeley. We have to learn the new technology. We have to step into new ways of thinking about how to offer the courses online rather than just brick and mortar, right? You can't stop. You have to, you have to constantly keep thinking, okay, what's the next collaborative thing? Like we have, I've just described our particular classes here at the Foundation of the Sacred Stream, but there's also a whole bunch more that goes on at the Sacred Stream. Yeah. So for instance, we have the center. It's this beautiful Lutheran church, 100-year-old Lutheran church. When we're not using it, we offer it to other spiritual teachers to use as an incubator for their programs. So we have collaborations with them that increases potential and value for consciousness through that. Mm-hmm. Then I create collaborations with Robert Thurman and his retreat center, Menla, which is in the Catskills. We do lots of collaborations, which increases their reach on the West Coast, our reach on the East Coast. And then, we work to help different, especially Tibetan Buddhist organizations. Like we do fundraisers with Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche to earn money for the Tibetan Association of Northern California by offering our resources. He offers his teaching, and then we generate this money for the Tibetans and diaspora. So we do all of these different things, continually enriching not only our own experience, but letting and feeling and offering other people to benefit from the fruits of our labor. So everything keeps moving. And we don't do that necessarily for money, but it all generates money because we have the intentionality of increasing mutual benefit.
Yeah. Excellent. Being of more and more and more service.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So Isa Gucciardi, what is the best place for therapists to learn more about you?
The sacredstream.org website. We have lots of articles. We have lots of videos, lots of resources, lots of podcasts. And, all of the listings for all of the classes are on the calendar. And you can learn more about depth hypnosis there and learn more about all of the other programs as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And thank you for your generosity in spending time with us. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And I hope that, I've heard that your podcasts really help a lot of people. And it's my wish that this helped them as well.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for listening. One of our next goals is to get up to 100 ratings on Apple Podcasts. Getting up to 100 ratings changes the way that Apple Podcasts categorizes us and makes it more likely that we're found by the people who need us. If you're willing to take just a minute and give us a rating, we would so appreciate it. Also, please consider writing a review about what's been valuable or helpful to you. Here's a recent review from Melissa. I love that Annie talks with therapists about things that are really impacting them on a daily basis. It's not just about sharing 3 quick tips, and she lets the conversation flow naturally so that we really get some amazing wisdom from her guests. This is definitely not your typical business podcast, and I love that. Thank you so much, Melissa. I really, really appreciate it. All right, I'll see you next week.